All right, let's get started. Welcome to the February 25th Cross Lake City Council meeting. Let's stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have no additions to the agenda for tonight, so we don't have to do that. We've got the consent calendar. All items here are listed, are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be acted on by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a citizen or councilman requests so. The only comment I want to make to this is line 20. There's a check going to Brenham Person, and we're going to pull that out, and we're going to talk about that under the attorney's report. So we'll just let that go for now, but we'll address that later.
You're approving all the other bills?
Well, is there a motion to approve?
I so move. I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, next is critical issues. Cindy, are you here? Come on down.
Thank you. Good evening. Cindy Mugato with the Cross Lake Chamber of Commerce, and I'm just here to give you an update on the preparations for the St. Patrick's Day Parade. The committee has been meeting a lot to figure this thing out. A lot of snow this year. So I want to give a big shout out to Ted and the crew at Public Works and the county as well for handling all the snow removal. It sounds like they're going to keep the snow on the snowmobile trail, which is great. We'll encourage people to ride their snowmobiles in and watch the parade. They've got a heated seat probably that they can watch the parade from. The other snow that we'd ask, though, to be removed would be areas that we can use for public parking. It seems to be one of the bigger issues for the parade. Some of the bigger parking lots like Reed's Market, that snow could be removed. And these are things that have been always happening year after year, that Ted just knows where to remove snow for public parking. The Exchange parking lot, we have permission from all of these private landowners to have the snow hauled out of there. So it's the best we can do. We're working on a shuttle system, a paid shuttle system, so it's not set in stone. We're not completely sure it's going to happen yet, but we're looking at putting spectator parking in on the south end of town, maybe one of the churches, and then shuttling them into the parade area, dropping them off in the Riverside area, and then bringing them back out there when the parade is over with. So on a small scale, we might give that a whirl this year and see if it works out. There's just some permissions that we're still waiting for, but we're hoping that that will work and alleviate some of the traffic congestion after the parade. The 6th annual Clover Dash is taking place again, and that runs backwards on the parade route. It starts at 9:30 in the morning. Registration is online. We have hire a professional company to do that, Karma Race Management. And new this year, they're adding a kids run at 9 a.m. The little kids are just going to run around the gazebo area in the town square, and they get a medal, and it's kind of cute. So that'll be fun. The raffle tickets that, the application, the permit that you just approved in the consent calendar, thank you for that. That raffle ticket helps us fund this event as well. The tickets this year are going up by $1, so they'll be $6 a piece, and with that ticket, you get a free Blinky button. There's some great raffle prizes. Crosswoods Golf Course has donated golf membership, of course, lodging, certificates at Boyd Lodge, Pine Peaks, places like that. So the raffle prizes total about $6,500 this year. Blinky button specials will be all over town. We have a new thing where we're not hunting for a pot of gold, we're going to chase the lucky leprechaun. So it's kind of a new game going on, and that'll all start on Friday before the parade. And then just the pre-parade festivities. The Cross Lake firefighters are doing their parade, their pancake breakfast. Whitefish Lodge and Suites has an indoor craft fair, vendor fair, and then of course there'll be pre-parade lineup entertainment going on all over town square. The parade actually starts at 2 o'clock. in the town square area, goes along the 1.5 mile route, ends at CNC Boatworks, where the floats have a choice to either cut through CNC Boatworks or go straight up the Highway 66 and out of town. So there's 2 ways that those floats can get out of town. So, thank you for tolerating all the shenanigans that is about to go on in the city of Cross Lake. It's a great tourism event for our community, and we're really looking forward to it.
off?
I didn't even bring one.
Oh, come on.
Blinky buttons will be for sale on Friday. So, unless you have any questions, that is the report on the parade.
So the only comment I'd make is we support it, and Ted, do whatever you got to do, right? Right?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cindy. Okay, Leah? Leah is going to talk about the National Loon Center.
Thank you for having me tonight, short notice. We have, about maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, Mike Linus sent a letter to you, and the attachments are the current legislation that's in the LCCMR bill this session, and it also has a definition of a fiscal agent. And so I'm here today to request the city to be our fiscal agent for the National Loon Center for the $4 million recommendation by the state of Minnesota. Before I get started, I just want to let you know that the way this, have you had time to read the legislation? Okay. And the first part of it, basically, they'll release $1.5 million in July of this year to do the outdoor initiatives, which are the docks, the outdoor exhibits, bird sanctuaries, and some other demonstrations. And that, once we've crafted the lease, and once the lease has been approved by the Army Corps of Engineers, that would release the $1.5 million. And then the state will release the other $2.5 million and anything remaining once we have our additional funding in place. Just a note on this legislation, the LCCMR, Rebecca Nash is the director. She did use the words fiscal agent in the beginning of the legislation, and then later on refers to it as fiscal sponsorship. She did this on purpose so that whoever is our fiscal agent would have some flexibility, because there is a difference between sponsorship and agent. And in the definition of agent, it says that you could receive funds, do accounting of records, procure contracts, handle RFPs. But this, because she wrote in sponsorship, which is more restrictive, and agent is more is less responsibilities, we'd have more flexibility. So we're recommending that the National Loon Center receive the funds, and we pay the bills. And then the city would just do, they do oversight and make sure that we're negotiating properly on our RFPs, getting bids. We do have Woodseth Smith and Nolting as our engineer and architect, and they will be helping with the RFP process as well. We have our bookkeepers are Clifton, Larson, Allen, and Mike's familiar with them. He worked with them before. Attorneys are Fredrickson. Numbers are being done by Julie Anderholm at CLC. And we also have the actual funds go from LCCMR to the Minnesota DNR Trust Fund. So they actually are paid to do additional oversight and any other reviews of contracts and bids as well. So there's a lot of checks and balances. So the idea is nobody wants the state of Minnesota. The state of Minnesota doesn't want, the DNR doesn't want, the Loon Center doesn't want there to be anything questioned. That everything is done right and on the up and up, because these are taxpayers' dollars.
What other agency could possibly serve as the fiscal agent besides the city?
Good question. I went to Propel, Sourcewell, Initiative Foundation, Mississippi, I think it's a Headwaters program. I can't remember who does it. Paula, blah, blah, blah. And none of them were interested. They're all way understaffed and too busy. So Mike said, Mike is very familiar with this, and please correct me if I'm not saying anything correct, or Mike Anglin's here too. He's very familiar with this and comfortable with this. The only other person is Cheryl Hills at Region 5 that's interested and has time to do it. It sounds like weekly, it could be anywhere from, depending on what's going on with the first project, that's the most real project right now and pending, is the 1.5 million. And that could be anywhere from 0 hours a week to 10 hours a week, depending on what we've got going on. Obviously, startup, it would be more time. Fiscal agents can earn a percent. They could give it back. They could keep it for time. As far as risk goes, we would take the risk, and what we're doing right now is we've hired an attorney to write up a memorandum of agreement so that we can make sure that we spell out all of our responsibilities, any risks, audits. I personally, the city's my first choice just because I have a great level of comfort with Mike Lioness, and I really want the city to be a partner. When we worked with the school, it was pretty cool that the city did the pass-through loan and became a...
But that's all the city did. They weren't any
Yep.
kind of an agent.
Right, but it was a nice partnership, a nice way to partner. And I feel like the city, for them to partner with the Loon Center, we're not asking the city for any money or any other duties, and I think it would be a nice partnership.
I question the time a little bit, only because we got so much stuff going on.
Right.
How do you guys feel?
Leah, what's the advantage to the city of Cross Lake to be a partner, to be an agent, and disadvantage to the city to be the agent?
I guess it's the advantage is that you'd be supporting a community effort. The economic development and growth that's predicted with the Loon Center is great. It'll be a great benefit for the city, and it would be nice for the city to say that they had a hand in that. It'd make me proud as a resident. I would say the city is probably the most qualified to look at this as a fiscal agent. Like I said, Mike has a high level of expertise in this.
So Leah, could you maybe explain to the group here why the DNR is requesting a fiscal agent for this
Oh.
project?
Yes. It's because I don't have any expertise doing this. I've never built a Loon Center before, and we are a brand-new nonprofit. This is a high-profile job for the state of Minnesota, or a high-profile funding for the state of Minnesota. It was fully funded, which is pretty unusual. There's only a couple projects that were fully funded, or recommended for full funding, I should say. So, yeah, they want to make sure that we're doing everything right. A private accountant cannot be a fiscal agent. So, even though we will have a private accountant doing it, we need somebody else to do the oversight.
Leah, one of my concerns is truly the time and hassle and all the factors of being the agent, because coming from things from the federal side in the old days, when my previous lives, that can get pretty tedious depending on the event, making sure that everything's done right, rechecking, handling things that didn't go right, et cetera, et cetera. So the time issue is what I'm looking at with just Mike and Shar really in the administration area, whether it could mushroom in terms of time.
Okay. Yeah, and that's the main, I think that's the main thing that Mike and I talked about that you'd have to consider, and that's something that I think we'd have to dig into more. How do you feel, Mike?
Yeah, how do you feel about it, Mike?
Well, I think it's something we're certainly capable of doing, and it's really, what Leah's saying, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you really don't know how much time and commitment this is going to take. You know, it wouldn't be just, well, we're going to take 3 days of Mike's time and you're going to go work on the Loon Center. You know, Shar would be involved with that, and the other folks in our office as needed to try to make sure we're fulfilling that role. But some of the questions that came up when Lee and I talked about this the first time was,
I said, if you're going to go to the council with this, they're going to want to know what kind of time commitment that you'd be expecting from the city to help facilitate this process. What kind of liability would the city be assuming, if any, to go through this process? And what would be the perception of the city fulfilling that role? And Leah's answers were, well, we're going to cut our own checks, right? We're
Yep.
not going to be receiving any money, and we're not making any management decisions. What they're really looking for is some other agency that's been around for a long time that can help with the oversight of that project, is really what you're asking.
Yep.
One question would be, how long is this project and what term would you be looking at?
Well, the initial project would probably be less than a year for the 1.5, the outdoor activities. Mike, what do you think, Anglin? How long do you think the first part's going to be? July 1st, we'd be able to start doing contracts?
We start doing design, full design for the outdoor spaces, and then construction should begin in the fall and be finalized in the following spring.
Yeah, if everything went well, otherwise we'd work through the summer and be completed in the fall. You know, we could do 2 different memorandums of agreement. We could do one for the first 1.5.
Can I ask a question here?
Yes.
When I read this document here, and, you know, I'm not going to read all of them, but, you know, one of the things, and I took it as a literal, this is what you're going to do if you're a fiscal agent. It said oversee all RFP bids for contracting work and ensure that proper state procedures for we just don't have the time here to do all of this stuff. And I think, at least from my viewpoint, if you can go through this and get a document that doesn't have all these things that we're not versed at, I mean, we can cut checks when other people approve that the check should be cut, if that's what they're looking for. But, you know, procure contracts or obtain written agreements, we're not expert, you know, we don't do that kind of stuff.
Right.
So who is the other person that was interested in doing it?
The Region 5, and they actually gave me back a comment sheet on each one of them, each one of these, and said what they would do and what they wouldn't do. And that's where the memorandum of agreement will come into play, is that this is the definition, these are possible functions, but this doesn't have to be what it is. So they said, like for that one that you're talking about, they said that they would transfer all accountability and tasks for that to the National Loan Center. That there would be, that they would hold the fiscal agent harmless and have an indemnification clause in the agreement so that they would not be held liable. And so, they're, you know, you guys have worked with Cheryl before, so she's willing to, you know, use whatever agreements they have, or, because they've done this before as well, and are ready to do it. But, you know, the nice part is that, as I stated, the Minnesota DNR Trust Fund, that they do this for all the projects for LCCMR. So they will review every RFP, they'll review every contract, every bid if we want. They're paid by LCCMR to do such. And then we'd have our accountants doing it all, and they're all high-level accounting. So it's just another set of eyes, a third set of eyes on it. Mike and Shar would not have to be actually doing any work. They'd be the third one in line. They wouldn't do reimbursements or anything. So,
I just really caution, because we've got about a half a dozen pretty significant projects that are real close to the books right now. This one, it would rather be a fun project if it was the only primary one we had to do in a year, but, you know, Mike, you know what your time is, and I don't know. And I don't know how much time, if it's 10 hours a week, that's 25% of his time.
well, I think that would be like, if that would be a really busy week. That would be like maybe when we were doing bids, or there's, you know, that would be a big deal. But it's not always going to be like that.
The one that scares me the most on here is monitoring all contracts, contractors for compliance with the contract. That's a lot to put on the city.
And that would actually be handled by Woodseth Smith and Nolte.
I think what you need to do, in my mind, is come back and see what you really want the city to do on this list and what you don't want us to do.
Maybe we got another meeting in 2 weeks, you know?
Yeah.
Well, and that's where we thought it might be helpful for you guys to just read this, start thinking about it, start, I'll give each one of you a call and say what you don't want to do. And then I can, since we just started drafting the agreement with the attorney, I didn't want to spend those thousands of dollars doing that until I actually had a feel for if this was something that, if you guys would like to do it and it's not too much time and energy on behalf of the city, I will finish crafting that.
Well, and it's not only the time, but it's the expertise. I mean, is that where
And
our
that,
expertise is?
If I could
I mean,
offer
I
a
don't know.
suggestion, if you would ask Becca Nash, what's the bare minimum the city has to do?
okay.
I don't think you need to ask or poll. I mean, I think I'm hearing they might want to do it as long as it's as limited as possible.
We'd like to
So-
show our support and be involved to a degree, but
So the memorandum of understanding could just clarify, what's the bare minimum that we would have to do to pass muster according to Becca.
Okay.
And Becca's, I've dealt with her before. She would quickly answer that, I think.
Thank you, Brad.
Yeah.
And I'll make sure that the letter is as simple as possible and get it into your packets as soon as I can. So if you have any questions, we can, we don't have to pass it that day. We can tweak it and do it again.
okay.
We're not in a hurry. It's just coming to the legislation right now. I'm trying to get all these things going. And I hope you say yes. So, anyway, if you'd like, I'll give you all a call too, and once I get it, and you can tell me what you don't like or like about it, if that sounds okay?
Is this the kind of thing that warrants like a workshop or something to sit down and talk about it, or not?
My concern is mostly time, because no matter what happens on here, it's more time on Mike. And I'm just thinking he's going to be busy with other stuff. So that's why I was asking the downside and the upside and the advantages Cross Lake. I guess I'm feeling Mike's pretty fully employed already. So it's extra time, it's either extra people or extra hours. I'm just weighing the advantages for that for Cross Lake.
And I totally appreciate that. That's our main concern as well, and I know that was Mike's. I can tell you, and I'm putting words in his mouth, I think he'd like to do it. He's been very encouraging and very helpful. He's taught me a lot here in the last 2 or 3 years. Shar, you've taught me so much. Everything from workforce housing to, crosswalks. So it's been really, really fun working with you guys, so thank
So
you.
maybe if we could share it or whatever we could do to
Yep.
contribute to it, but committing to the whole thing seems like a lot to me too, so.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to take this as we're going to continue the conversation.
Yep,
Yes.
Thank you.
sounds good. Thank you, Leah. Okay, next is public forum. No action will be taken on any of the issues raised. If appropriate, the issues will be placed on the agenda for a future council meeting. Speaker must state their name and address. Each speaker is given 3 minutes, 3-minute time limit. Come on up, Darrell.
Darrell Swanson, 37804 Dream Island Road, Cross Lake. I won't take 3 minutes. On the Loon Center, I think it's a good idea for the city to be involved. And maybe once the list of responsibilities are hashed out, and all of that, perhaps there could be an administrative fee that could be charged to cover the time that Mike's going to take. Because obviously, when you're going to take this on, Mike will do a good job, but at the end of the day, you guys are responsible. So I think you want to take whatever time it's going to take to make sure that Mike's comfortable, that gets everything done, because oversight is oversight. But just consider perhaps an administrative fee. And is there an ongoing tax base with the Loon Center? okay? So they will be paying property taxes along the line, and I guess that's too, because we do have, is that true?
Not property tax.
Okay, okay. Somewhere down the line, too, perhaps there could be some kind of a fee to help cover a police and fire protection, because it's going to generate more traffic, there's going to be more of this, there's going to be more of that, and it might be helpful for the taxpayers if there could be something more or less on an ongoing basis to help allay that cost, so that it's just not put on the taxpayers.
That's a really good idea, and I do have some ideas that the city could have for concessions.
Okay, good. We like that. And of course, then there's probably another thing coming up that we'll talk about a little bit too, but thank you.
Come on up, Mark.
Hi, Mark Wessels, 13336 East Shore Road, Cross Lake. Just want to talk about something. I've been saying it behind the scenes for quite a while and at a lot of different committee meetings. There is one negative to economic development in the community, and that's increased traffic. That's the only negative. I mean, pretty much everybody wants the economic vitality of this community to grow. I do too. But we did get a letter, or I understand we had a comment from the county, Mr. Hall, Highway Department, warning the city, don't be reactive on traffic issues. Be proactive. We've got a new big building going up by Lion Ace Hardware there. Going to employ a lot of people. We have potentially a new apartment building. We have this Loon Center. All that stuff is going to drive traffic into town. I don't want to be sitting at my stop sign from 8 a.m. till noon to be able to get out into the road. We need to be talking with Crow Wing County about what are we going to do. I've heard things of roundabouts and things like that. I guess I'm all right with that, but I'm not hearing anybody at the city level talking about it, about traffic. Is yeah, we need to think about that, and that's as far as it goes. So I just want to remind you again, traffic is going to be an issue. If you want to make a resort town an ugly place to come, bog it down with bumper-to-bumper traffic for 10 miles in every direction.
Well taken, Mark.
The conversations that he's speaking of about talking with the county, Mike and I have already met with them. And I've met with the Army Corps. So those comments and those processes are in place and are starting now, so.
Could we maybe at the next meeting or something, kind of put that in front of the public eye a little bit so they can slowly be educated or see the options? Or
How about I ask the county engineer to stop by and give us just a little update what he's thinking?
Yeah, I don't think it's really fair to wait till it's too late and all of a sudden here it is and learn to live with it.
He's told Mike and I what they're thinking, but, and it would be a roundabout on that corner. That's their solution to the traffic. So,
I think, if we could bring that forward sooner than later.
I will ask him to come to the next council meeting and talk about it if that's,
Yeah,
okay.
great. Thanks,
Thank you.
Ted.
Hi, Leah Hagerstein. I, too, we started working on traffic, and we had a grant, I want to say it was 3 years ago, with Blue Zones. I don't know if you're familiar with it at all, but it's the only grant in the country, and Cross Lake got it. Mike O'Connell and I wrote it, and we started a connectivity group, and Pat Necco's here on that, and Patty was part of all of it. Anyway, about 3 years ago, Blue Zones came, and it was about $16,000, $17,000 to have them come. And they did traffic and crosswalks, a whole myriad, and it did not include a roundabout for their recommendation. It just included slowing traffic before the dam bridge and narrowing the road after the dam bridge and having a four-way stop with no stop sign. It's pretty cool, and it's part of the city records here, the study. And then we had the University of Minnesota come and look at it as well, and they concurred that that was a good idea. And we also had a grant from the National Park Service that we still have that we can utilize with the city and our connectivity work group, and that also showed just slowing the traffic down and narrowing the road. We did meet with Tim Bray almost 3 years ago. We had Paul Teedy come up, and they are the ones that came up with the roundabout idea. And Tim did call me last week, and we talked at length about it, and I thought, I concur. I said to Tim, he should probably bring his roundabout idea up here and like put it out there, because everything that we've been working on to date has not supported that. And there is growth coming, and the examples that I heard from Tim is that it was something in Baxter where they shared the costs, the school shared the costs of a roundabout. I don't know how expensive they are. I know Ted Strand was also a co-chair for the walkability study with the former park director, John Hinkie. And there's a lot of homework's been done for a while on this, so I'm not surprised, and I do think that it would be helpful to have the county come up.
Was there a 70-unit care facility and a loan center in on that 3-year-old study?
Well, we had a whole myriad of ideas, and we created a video for the city for growth along the corridor, towards the golf course. We had high-rise apartments, townhomes. We had the Loon Center in it. We had a new school in it. I did remind Tim that he had the school pay, I think it was $7,000, $8,000 to do a traffic study, and that the school did not warrant any increased stops or change in traffic or parking. And that study was done by, you guys hired him, Woodsell Smith and Nolte. So also, I wanted to, I know that Corrine came and talked to the city and gave a number of 230,000 visitors in the day use area and the campground annually. And that number actually was for all of the things that she manages. So she's corrected that number to 130,000 annually.
Additional?
Nope, that's what she currently has. And the Corps did issue a statement to the National Loon Center and to me that I'll share with them too, that they're not willing to pay anything for their entrance, like to change it. They don't have the funds for it, and they're not going to participate.
Dave, would it be worthwhile also to see what the other plan was without the roundabout in the past? Would that be something that we could look at too?
Yeah.
And I think, Ted, you probably still have that. Or Pat, do you still have all those plans? Or yeah, that's right, you posted it. We have that digitally. Cindy has it.
I think we should just bring the public into whatever's going on and let them see.
You know, and the reason for Blue Zones coming and doing that study was just for this reason. We were planning ahead. So I would really like to see all of that work that Ted and John Hanke and everybody did. Pat is still doing with her connectivity group. I'd like to see all that come to fruition. And that was all came out of the Minnesota Design Team visit. So it's there. We should use it.
You know, utilizing the television and Channel 12, could we ever put a little program together for them? So they wouldn't have to sit through the whole council meeting and they could just look at that? Would there be a value to that? I don't know. I don't know how you'd promote it or whatever, but
Yeah.
you know, without information, people around town talk a lot. And the more information we can give them, at least it'll be educated talking.
We do have the video that Woodsell Smith and Nolte produced, and not all of it happened, but a lot of it did, and a lot of it's going to happen. That's pretty crazy how much we had put into that. So, I mean, we could show that, and we could post the Blue Zones recommendation.
Well, I'd try to be as accurate as you can, but,
Yeah, it's all public, so,
right.
yeah, it's a good idea.
Is it possible that we can have WSN get involved in this and spearhead I mean, you work with the county, you know what's going on here, just, pull together the latest and then come back to the council. They know what's going on. I mean, everybody's been to different meetings, but they
Yeah,
can
or if
get,
the
they can
county
get
could-
the closest, that's the latest, and
And not have the county come, you mean, or?
No, they'd
both?
work with the county.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'd
Yeah,
work and find out
whatever.
what's going on,
Whatever information we can get.
you know?
Yeah, we've been in the discussions with the county.
Yeah, so you would probably have the latest and greatest, and we're not off on a tangent here.
Pat Netco, Cross Lake resident and business owner. None of this is a surprise. We have presented this Blue Zone study to everybody. We've presented it to the public. The Cross Lakers have a meeting every August where we do an update to the public. We have had this whole study printed and given to many, many people who attend that meeting. That's a meeting where we could do an update and we could do something like that with this. But there's been a lot of work done already. So for those of you who are new on the council, I invite you to look at that. There's a copy here, I'm sure. So this is nothing new, and this is a lot of work that has been done on a lot of this stuff. So in our August meeting, we're going to do this again. We've done this every year since the Minnesota Design Team came and Blue Zones did this study. And there actually is some ideas for roundabouts in this study, different ways of doing roundabouts and different looks, and there's a lot of different aspects to that. But this is all work that's been going on for a long time.
It's been kind of conceptual though, and now it's becoming more of a reality.
Right, well, that's how it has to start.
Yeah, no,
And,
exactly.
and
but
the
now-
ideas have to come forward, and we have to, the actions that are going to be taken are going to need public input, obviously,
And money.
and money, and everything else. Permission, and land, and who's going, there's a whole lot of ifs along with this.
And I don't think, in reviewing our capital budgets and everything, I don't know that we're up to date on what money we should be plugging, if anything at all. That's my concern is,
Well, there hasn't been
We're
any
behind.
request for any
Right.
money. There's not
Right.
been an idea, there's not any of that going on right now. But what I want to just reiterate is that a lot of work has been done, the studies are there. We do updates to the public through the Cross Lakers every August at Zorba's. We have a public meeting, and everybody's invited to come to that and see what's been going on. And if you want to join a work group, we're always looking for people to join a work group. And if you're interested in talking about, do we want a roundabout, what's going to happen with traffic, then come and join a group, and let's get some more conversation going on that. Okay?
It's just out of respect to the general public, though, August might be a little too far out to keep them informed, so if we can do something to keep them in the loop.
We have a city website. Can't we use the website and put stuff on there?
If it's easy enough for them to navigate, yeah. A lot of times it's not. But
Well, if somebody's interested and wants the knowledge, they have to do some research. So they have to come and look for it. You can't spoon feed everything into everybody, so come to the meetings, get informed, check out the website. If you have questions,
can you
let's
look at the
do that.
camera when you say that? No, I'm just kidding.
Darrell Swanson, one last item. Mr. Mayor and Council, we don't own these roads. They're owned by the county. So it's good to give our input, but they will be making the final decision on roundabouts or whatever, and we'll have input. But our two major roads in town do not belong to the city of Cross Lake, and they're not maintained by the city of Cross Lake. They're maintained by the county of Crow Wing. So they're the ones that are going to do the roundabout. They're the ones that are going to make the final decisions and have plenty of input and have the public hearings, whatever, but just so you're aware, because they set the speed limits, they set it all.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Come on up, Mark.
My name is Mark LaFawn. I live at 13058 Happy Cove Road. And throughout this Loon Center development and all the processing, I've heard economic development. I've heard how it's going to build for Cross Lake. I've seen numbers about 150,000 new visitors to town. I want to know, but what I have not heard is how this is going to affect people like me that live on the lake or in the back areas of the lake. We need access to the post office. That's where I get my mail. If you have impediments to traffic and 150,000 people at 2 per vehicle, that's 75,000 more vehicles coming through town, if you believe the numbers that we've been told. I want to know how this affects those of us who don't sell beer or doodahs or gasoline or ice cream. How does this help the typical person that lives on the lake, other than cause issues for the loons? When I've heard they're going to take boats out so people can see the loons. We've heard a lot of stuff. I believe that somewhere under the DNR rules, that's called harassment. Loons don't want to be seen. They don't want to be approached and looked at in boats. They're not going to come into the loon center because you want them, because you build new docks. That's going to drive them right on down the road to the next set of lakes. But again, how does this impact those of us who actually live here on a day-to-day basis and don't have a business here and don't have the money involved, except for paying for it? And I heard this isn't going to cost the city anything. Then I heard up to 10 hours a week of Mike's time. Excuse me, Mike is paid by the city, and that's city money, and it comes out of my taxes.
Point well taken, Mark.
Thank you.
I just wanted to correct just a couple things, just because it's a small town. And
It is.
I know. And I can appreciate the scare for more traffic, but the actual visitation number that the Corps currently receives in campers and day use is about 130,000 visitors annually. That's what they get.
That's only 65,000 cars.
Well, that's currently, but that's currently here. That's not an increase. So I just wanted to correct that. I just wanted to say, too, that the goal of the Loon Center and Freshwater Institute is to teach us how to do better. The purpose of the docks that are going in are to protect the shoreline and get people off the shoreline so that it can be restored, so that there's more place for fish to spawn, wildlife to live. The National Loon Center's Freshwater Institute is working in conjunction with the University of Minnesota and the DNR to study all of the data that the lakes associations are collecting. We're getting about $500,000 from the DNR to do that. It's pretty cool to protect the water. We're talking about no wake zones, building rafts for loons to keep them safe. There will be no loon watching tour boat to go out and chase loons. It's illegal. All the outdoor initiatives that we're able to start are to protect our water, to make people that are recreators also be stewards.
Anybody else? Okay, not seeing anybody, we'll close public forum. The mayor's report, the first thing on there is the looking at the properties. Let's see, I'm just at a loss for words here, for the expansion or the building needs. So we're looking at 2 lots to the north and the city building to the south, and then there's another vacant adjacent 7 acres west of that, or south of that. And we just want to authorize to go and see what the price of them are.
Brad, could you maybe put that map up on the overhead?
Yeah, that'd be good.
The item E2, E1 on the backside. Everyone can see that.
Now, one point I want to make kind of to the public here, but for all of us, is the city does not own a lot of property in town. We down by the Public Works, we own some property, in the community center, we own some property, but there's not much in town that we own, and we don't have a map. I should have asked for that. Would have been interesting. But we got an opportunity for some property right around City Hall now, and I think we're to the point, the building committee is to the point of looking at it and seeing what it is.
I'll make that motion. I'll second.
We should have a little conversation about it, yeah? Come on up, Tom.
Tom Swenson, 36036 West Shore Drive. In your motion, the way you worded it, go find out what the price is, are you saying just go ask them what they want for it? Or are we authorizing them to not lock in, but negotiate so that we get a rock bottom price, so we know if it's better to go to the north or the south? I just want whoever's going to negotiate to make clear that there's options, that we don't just go next door and say, what do you want for the property? And he says $750, and you go there, and, you know, it needs to be sort of a negotiation, even though it's not going to necessarily be a locked in at this point.
Thank you very much.
If that makes sense.
I was at a little loss for words there.
Okay.
But that's exactly what I meant.
And that's what the
And
assessor.
I think we also need to weigh the benefits of the different properties, and there are some different benefits to them, so. Mike, you and Brad, however, figure it out, but look into that, and we're gonna have to do something to this building at some point in time, and so to me, I think there's a value on a temporary basis for that school or something, but, you know, think about the different benefits and come back with a recommendation, I guess, to the committee or to the council on which way to go. So we got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay. The next thing is the hot topic, the sales tax. I got a little story here about sales tax. I'm a kind of an advocate to really try to look into the benefits of the sales tax in town. I was out in Utah last week, went up to Zion Park. The gateway to Zion Park is a little town called Springdale. Nice little town of 1,500, 2,000 people. Went in, looked at the park, came out, had lunch, went to the gift shops. On the way out of town, I said, Nance, ask Siri how much the sales tax is in Springdale, Utah. So she asked her phone, which is that easy to find out. Sales tax in Springdale was 7.5%. The state sales tax in Utah is 4%. This little town charges 3.5% to all the tourists, and I don't know how many million there are, that visit Zion Park every year, and it pays for a beautiful little town. So I'd like there to be a group of people, and I think the council needs to be part of it, to look into the benefits of the city, to look at a sales tax. Any comments, any support, any motion? Any volunteers? Daryl, come on up. Or you just want to volunteer?
Can I say something?
I think so, yeah, I don't have an objection to it.
I guess I'd volunteer to be on the tax committee, because I see it as more than just a sales tax, although that can be part of it. Right now, the city has two pots of gold, let's call them. One to pay for the infrastructure, police, fire, whatever we need. One is reserves, which we're probably going to be using some of that, and the other are property taxes. And those are our two pots of gold today. I would think that this committee could advise the council, as long as the council is part of it, I think it's very important the council be a part of it, about what is the best way to go? What is the mix? Is it some of each? Is it some reserve, some property tax, sales tax? Or is it a combination of reserve and sales tax? You know what I'm saying. But I think it's broader than just the sales tax. You have some information. I had gained some of it. And this last year, it's becoming more popular tax in Minnesota. There were 16 municipalities in the state that approved sales taxes this past year in November at the election. And now the state is having the enabling legislation to do it. So I guess sales tax is part of it. I'd just like to see that part of the mix of the overall to see where this is going. And I'd be happy to be part of that committee.
Thank you, Daryl.
If you agree to that. Because I also think then, It's just like the other committees. If we're going to be a part of them, we should fill out an application so that it's on file, people know what people's backgrounds are, so that, and there can be part of the public record if you want to serve on that committee. Okay.
And I would encourage, even if you're in opposition to it, to get on the committee, voice your opposition. But I think we need to look into it. It takes a referendum. It's nothing that we can decide. It's got to go to voters. It's quite a process to get through it. So it's nothing that's going to happen next month. Come on up.
I'm so sorry. I was going to go home early tonight. I would just want to say, I think it's a good idea. But, and the reason, I know that the property taxes are low here, like lower than in some cities. I also know that I live in a pretty, in a retirement community, exactly like where I exactly live. And they do like 6 months in one day in Florida or Arizona, and so they're homesteaded someplace else. So I just think not only for the tourists, but I think it would be great to have a sales tax. And I know like Baxter doesn't, they have, what's Baxter's sales tax? I think they have one. So I don't think it's like that big a deal. And I don't even think we have to be extreme and do 3%. Just
Oh, no,
doing
3%
doing a
was-
0.5% to
Yeah.
start with and ease people into the idea. I think it's a good idea.
The 3.5% was an extreme example for a little town, but no, that's not where we're going at all. But we just have got to spend a lot of money in the upcoming short term, and we need help figuring out how to do it, and I think any contribution is going to help.
I would agree to be on that committee as well. I don't know if the business community would support a sales tax or not. So I think the research needs to be done to see how it's affected other communities, businesses in other communities, as well as residents and tourists. So I would offer
Thank
to
you
be on
very
that
much,
committee as
Cindy.
well.
Yeah. It's just for our education, How does the council feel about it? I think if we're going to do it, I think we need to be a part of it.
I think it's worth looking into.
Lot of hoops to go through, you got to figure out what you're going to spend it on.
Well, I don't think that'll be hard for us to do.
Well, but what Leah said is our tax rate is low, and I'm concerned that they're going to say, well, you could raise your taxes a little more to pay for this stuff. So-
And they could.
But I don't know.
We could be at a
See,
dead
that's a
end, but
new thing
that's
to
part
us,
of
so.
figuring it out.
Yeah.
My biggest motivator of the thing is we got 20 or 30,000, however many people come into town every year, and we got 2,500 that pay the tax bill, pay for everything. And if we could spread that out and figure out a box on the entrance to town where they could drop a $5 bill in coming into town, it would help pay for this stuff, so.
The gate.
So should we make a motion to approve the forming of a committee to look into the sales tax, or the taxes?
Do we need a
I don't know.
committee, or do we need Mike to see the ins and outs of how we do it?
If you remember back in January, we presented you some information on the process to do that, and we even provided the council that time with an estimate of what could be raised through that process at 0.5%. So what we didn't do at that time is direct staff to go forward with that process and put a timetable together and saying, okay, here's what we're going to use these funds for potentially and so forth. So if that's what you're asking to do, I don't know that you need a committee to do that.
Well, the extension of that, if I could add in, is I think the committee is a group of citizens that would look into it, and they would help convince, talk into, persuade the other citizens that this is not a bad deal. If we're going to do it, it's got to go to a vote, and we got to have the people behind us. So by having a group of people helping present it to them, I think it will, not that your information, but their information is going to be a little different. You
Sure.
could give us logistic information and look into it and do that, but I think the committee would help get the appetite of the citizens, and, that's my thought
If
about
I
it.
could throw in, the process, I think Mike was saying, the process or how you do it is, we already know that. We don't need a committee for that. A committee would be, I think, if you want a better feel from the community of how much, if to or not to, what type of projects they'd want. I mean, it was to get more input from the public on
Absolutely,
if to do it and why, but the actual process to go forward and vote on and all that, we know that. Staff can handle that. So it's more, do you want to do it or not would be what the committee's for.
And
if
the
that's what the
staff can
council
certainly
wants,
help
yeah.
give the committee information and, whatever. But
Right.
I think a committee, I think the council would be a good part of it. And if we could get a half a dozen citizens or however many want to be on it, but
Let me just toss something out. Isn't that what the vote's for 2 years from now?
well, but
You
we
know,
got to
that- I mean,
educate.
If the committee comes back and says, no, we don't think anybody in town wants it, then what are you going to do?
We'll drop it. We won't have a
You won't
vote.
allow, I mean, but you haven't, I mean, that's why they allow all
I
of the
think the
citizens
information
to
will
vote.
all come out.
Right. But do you see what I'm saying? Let all of the citizens, spend the time, do it right, and say, this is what we're proposing, do you like it or not?
Well,
Right, the committee is
you're-
not all of the,
Well,
I
you're
have
right.
nothing against the committee, but it's not all
Well,
the
I
residents.
guess if we're
say.
going to ask staff to look into it
Right.
in that detail, I don't know that we want to ask them to do that.
If I could weigh in a little bit, the vote, you're right, it has to go to a vote, as I think you've all kind of suggested, and then in the end, the state legislature still has to authorize it. Both of those could be roadblocks, but I think your point is, we'll never get there if you don't go that far.
Right.
But that voting question is very specific, so you might want a committee to help, is it a 0.5%, for example, and what's the project, and, you have to be, it's not just, do you like the idea of sales tax? It's not yes or no, check the box. It's going to be an exact final bill that we're going to give to the state that they would vote yes or no on. So the committee could help form,
Look into options, look into,
I'm not saying you need it or don't need it, but that's what it'd be for.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, because it's very restrictive on what you're using it for, and a lot of people I don't understand all of it, but I've read all of it
It's got to be for
recently.
capital.
Right.
Staff could help
Yep.
give a list of things, we can't do it for everything. We could help narrow the statute's pretty clear on some things you can do and can't do.
Mm-hmm.
But that sure doesn't tell staff or the council, we should, build a city hall with it, or, I mean, that's complete public opinion policy questions that staff can't help
Right.
with.
Right.
There's another thing that we need to think about too, is last week there was a bill introduced in the legislature that would allow cities to just go ahead and do this. And that hasn't been talked about yet, without having to go through legislative approval. There was a bill a couple of years ago where that was floated to authorize, to have cities say, well, we're just going to do this, we don't need legislative approval, and it failed. So they're taking another stab at it. So
but
that'll be
it's
interesting
getting,
to see how that comes out.
it's
too.
gaining popularity. People are looking at it to a revenue to help do stuff, so, I don't know.
Darrell Swanson, again, Mike is absolutely correct. One of the things that's not in your packet, which will be helpful as you look at this, is an update from August of 2018. It was a brief put together by the Research Department of the Minnesota House of Representatives, and it gives a nice history and a background of how this has developed over the years, as well as what are all the requirements that you need to do to put one in place, and then what are the jurisdictions that have them in the state of Minnesota right now, and what do they use them for. Some of them are as broad as infrastructure. Some of them are sewers. Detroit Lakes just passed one for a police department building. I thought
Community center.
Chief
Skate- I mean,
Chief
you
Lohmiller might have a smile on that one. And I'm sorry for the police chief, there wasn't one. That was it was for the police, that's right. It's you that should be smiling, Eric, yeah. Maybe we'll have to have one for Chip, too. But in any event, maybe getting a copy of this packet, which is something the committee would have, too. And this is really kind of like this isn't the end, this is only the beginning. And certainly, I think we need to take our time. And with Cindy Mugato, volunteering to join this committee for the business community, that's really, really important. Because obviously, these other communities that have enacted sales tax around the state of Minnesota had support, at least maybe not opposition, from the business community. But it is popular with the voters, because the voters see it as a way not to have to pay for infrastructure totally on their own, and allow it, and a lot of these places aren't resort communities that are putting these sales taxes in place, like Elk River is another one that just did it this last fall. So, and there's a limit. The most you can do is 1.5%. That's what Walker did. But
That's
I
what
think
Walker's at, yeah.
Yeah, but I think what we're talking about is probably 0.5%. So if you don't have this committee with outside involvement, I would suggest you do it yourselves and have the working sessions, because you're going to need, you're going to need to do it, or you're going to say, no, we don't want a sales tax, and we're just going to pay for these infrastructures through our two-pot of gold that we have always had, which is property tax and hopefully some reserves.
Thank you, Daryl.
Yeah.
Hello, Doreen Galloway, 36080 Johnny Street, Cross Lake. I get, excuse me, I'm on the committee for, as you all know, for, what our community needs are with the city and the fire. And I guess I would like to see this committee formed, but I would like to see it even, if you could, Daryl, expand it a little bit. We haven't talked about like vacation rental by owners. They're just kind of here making all kinds of money, and people are using their units, and I don't know what the city is getting out of that, but I do know that we have some real huge needs going forward when you talk about these projects that we have, and we've got to figure out how to pay for them. So if you can't do it, I think that we really need to have a committee that is going to do it, so that when our committee meets, we know how realistic we can be with really what we can accomplish.
Yeah.
Thank you.
all right. So does that require a motion to ask for a committee to get formed?
I think if you want to authorize a committee, you should have a motion for that, and make sure there's consensus among the council.
I'm just wondering if we should let Mike do, were you thinking of doing a timeline?
Well, I think,
Let's assume, let's just assume that we're gonna, that we want to put it on the ballot, the next opportunity. And can you back up from there and say, I have to have this done by this date, and we have to decide what we're gonna do it on by this date, and once you get that done, then the committee can see that.
Would it be
We shouldn't have
possible
the
to
committee
put it
have
on
to
this
do
fall?
that.
Have a special election for it?
no,
Oh,
it
it's
has to be at a general election.
General, it said in there, so.
Okay, so
But just
it's
give us some
3 years
education on it, and then you can let the committee help decide on, well, what should we use it for? Because it's true, we're spending a lot of money, and it really would be nice if we could get some help from the visitors, especially the 75,000 that Leah's gonna bring in here, to help us pay for some of this stuff, so,
However,
But I mean, put a little more structure on what the process is, and then turn them loose, and the committee could be, talking to the community and explaining, just like you
Yeah.
alluded to earlier. That would be a
but
big
it is a
help.
long process. It's at minimal, a year and a half out, I'm guessing, even a little longer
Right.
than that. But,
2020.
if you don't get started,
Right,
it'll never happen.
right.
Yeah, it would go on the ballot for 2020, and then after that, it would go to the legislature for approval under the current rules.
Right.
And then you're really talking, the first time you'd see any money potentially would be 2021 at the earliest.
Oh, yeah.
You got to start someplace.
But you gotta start.
So I'll make a motion that we get him to do his thing first, and then, once you get it done, then we can allow the committee to start working, so.
But we can
We can
open it up
select,
to
we can
sign
have
up for
committee
the committee.
applicants
I mean, you gotta
apply,
come forward, sign up a
but they
sheet,
can't
and
do anything until Mike gets the framework around and do a little education on.
Well, and I think,
what
Mike, you
they're
should be
doing.
part of the committee to some
Sure.
degree, I
Yep.
mean,
Yep. That makes sense?
yeah.
We can
All
do
right,
that.
we got a motion from Mr.
I'll second
Schwab.
that.
Gary seconds. Any conversation? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, the next thing on the mayor's report is kind of a,
Nothing.
huh? Isn't there?
No,
Yeah, I want to talk about the firefighters. Remember that? Should I do it now?
is that our next?
I got a little story about the fire department. First of all, I want to support the guys. Our volunteer firefighters are fabulous, and I had a story of one of the firefighters, and I actually think it was at my house that burned down 3 years ago. But one of the guys went to the scene in his own pickup. During the all the goings-on, somebody backed into his truck, damaged his truck. And the council at the time or whatever, all I want to do is show support to these firefighters. If they incur any costs in the line of doing their duty or something like that, I want the city to take that liability on. I think this guy should have had his $500 deductible payment made to him, you know? It shouldn't have come out of his pocket. Am I clear in my story there, or no?
So maybe if I can help, Dave, what the issue we were talking about is a paid on-call fire person responds to a call with their personal vehicle, and they're at the scene, and their vehicle gets dinged. Well, we have to remember that personal vehicle is not owned by the city. It's their own personal vehicle, and they have insurance on that. And when they acquire insurance, one of the questions at least my insurance agent does, ask me, do you use your vehicle for work? Do you use it for commuting purposes? Are you listed on Uber or Lyft or any of these other services that provide rides? And so that goes into determining the rate that individual pays. So from the city's perspective, I don't think we should pay for the cost of fixing the individual's vehicle. And when I say that because they made a choice to drive that vehicle to that scene. And there's risk in doing that, and it's reflected in the insurance rates they pay. What would potentially make sense would be that if that damage was incurred in their capacity as a fireman serving on behalf of the city, it might make sense for the city to reimburse their deductible.
And, you know,
Maybe it will, maybe it won't.
I'm not scheduling the firefighters. I don't know what they do, but I know that, and I know this firsthand. My daughter's in my house burning down, and she calls the fire. These guys got to go open the doors, get the truck started, get everything going out. For that guy to go straight to the fire and get a hands-on view of what's going on and radio back is invaluable. And I think we want to promote that. In promoting that, we got, you know, these guys got to know that we got their back. You know, it's not going to cost them something. I just think, especially in that circumstance, and it's up to Chip and Eric to decide what is important and what is a first responder. But I think if there's 25 fire guys, you know, we don't want all 25 of them heading down there in the pickups, but I would think there'd be a couple of them that would be their primary duty with the radio, this is what's going on. And I want to encourage that. I mean, these guys go and they fight fires, they put their life, they do all that stuff, and they get hardly nothing for it. And I think we got to take a look at that whole policy, but this one here initially, I just think it's a shame the guy did. So I'd like to, you know, move something forward, and even if it takes a little while to develop the policy for it, move toward developing a policy so that these guys know we got them, you know, we're going to cover them.
I think Chip should get involved. I don't know how you schedule, so that should come from the head of the department. And it makes sense, but I don't know the details, so.
To just get it straight, the officers will respond directly to the scene. If they have to go by the fire hall, they're supposed to pick up the chief vehicle or the command vehicle. But you have to remember, we all respond to medicals, all 259 of them last year, 259 of them in our personal vehicles. So we pay for our own gas, we pay for oil changes, tires, so you might be opening up something.
Well, you know, we talked about that in the personnel meeting today, and we're going to continue to talk about it. But I don't think for the little reimbursement that we give those guys for doing what they do, we can ask them to throw that much in. And I think, you know, the medicals, if they live on West Shore Drive and there's a call on West Shore Drive, for them to come back here and get a different vehicle and go there is crazy. So
No,
they
we
got to
don't.
go.
Right.
I think we need to limit the number that go as necessary, but we need to support them.
Right, well, and we have duty
Why would
crews
they
at
do
night,
it if you don't
and they
support 'em?
take more often in the summer, they'll take the Tahoe home or the Expedition home, but it needs to be in a heated garage, so in the wintertime, it doesn't get taken home as much, because they don't want to take their personal car and put it outside, because it has to be heated. But yeah, the situation you're talking about, I didn't hear about it until about 2 or 3 weeks after the fact, so.
Yeah.
I mean, we could have turned it in.
Well,
but-
and I'm sure that there's multiple situations. I just stumbled upon that one.
Yeah.
I'm sure it happens, you know, and I just think we got to set a policy, whether we do it exactly tonight or we have another 1 or 2 personnel meetings and we come up with a recommendation or whatever it is, but
I think the best way, we don't want to make policy like right now. I mean, if there's a motion for consensus that everyone agrees that's a good idea, you direct Chip to come back with suggestions to help show that you got their back. But it still would be on a case-by-case basis on how you actually reimburse, probably done by Chip. But the council could ask for an update or review of the policy to make sure there's maybe more encouragement for personal, reimbursements, that can be a council policy, but let's have him work up a policy and come back. And I think that's the right way to go. If the council thinks that that's a good idea, for all we know, there's already good reimbursement policies in there, but he can look at it, and now that he's heard your fact pattern
and
there.
we don't want to take it advantage of.
Right.
But we also, I do anyway. I don't know how you guys feel about it. That's my feeling about it, so.
Let the chief come back, let him, redraft the policy based on what he thinks he's hearing from you guys, if the council thinks that's a good idea. That's how I would suggest we do it.
And maybe we'd have one personnel meeting in between that or something, just to, whatever.
I'll put something together.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you.
That's it. City Administrator's Report.
Okay, so I've got a couple items to talk about. We had, why don't you take one of these and pass it down? We had a Personnel Committee meeting mid-morning. We had a lot of discussion on, and I gave my copy away, didn't I? Sorry. That's right, I got another one. I do that a lot. I pass something out and I give my own copy away.
I think I could get a hold of that then.
Sure, you want to pass that down for the overhead?
Brad, have one, I assume.
Okay. Now I am down to my last copy. So we had a personnel meeting this morning, and the purpose of that meeting was to update the Personnel Committee on a number of things. The first item was to talk about the successful negotiation of the Teamsters union contract. Teamsters is our police officers, and there's 3 of them in that contract. So we went through what's called the collective bargaining process, where the union provides the city with the notice of an intent to bargain. City responds to that, and then we have a lot of back and forth between the negotiating team for the city and the negotiating team for the union. And for this time around, the negotiating team for the city was council members Dave Schrupp and Gary Hecox, and our labor attorney, Jessica Durbin. So thanks to all of you for a successful negotiation. On the Teamsters side, the negotiating team was Les Kundo, which is the union rep, and then officers Willard and Meyer. Jake Meyer were the negotiating team. We had some correspondence early in January. We had a meeting mid-January, and we were able to come to terms with basically 1 day of meetings, where everyone felt comfortable with what each side was giving up or achieving. So the important thing about that contract is we do have a new contract term. It runs from January 1st of 2019 to December 31st of 2021. And some of the highlights of the contract are, we have a new wage scale, of course. And one of the issues we ran into with the existing contract is we ran out of steps to move people to. So 2 of our 3 officers were at the top of the step. So there wasn't really any room for them to grow. So what we did was we reset the wage scale. We removed some of the steps on the bottom, added some to the top, and then we renegotiated where those new steps, where staff would be placed on those new steps, so they could see a clear path of where they were going with respect to steps and years. So again, I said it was a 3-year contract. For 2019, the negotiating team accepted the union's request for a 3% adjustment for 2019. And part of that consideration, the city, they negotiated was, we're going to add more steps to that scale. So it's not a situation where they say, we want this or else. We say, well, okay, here's what we want, here's what you want, now let's talk about what makes sense for both of us. So we had real good discussion around those topics. So going into 2020 and 2021, those scales move up 2%. And the way these contracts work is between 2019 and 2020, you go to a new year and you move over a slot on the step. So you don't get a 2% increase, you get somewhere more than that. And for 2020 and 2021, it's about 4.8%. So it's between 4 and 5%, which is pretty typical for those types of scales. If you remember back in December, we had a special meeting to go through the same process with AFSCME. And that would be the union staff that are in Ted's department in Public Works and TJ's department down at the parks. Similar process, similar concept. So we basically get to the same place as far as the percent goes over the life of the contract. Some of the other considerations we talked about during those negotiations were, we clarified the payout of comp time to comply with the newly revised constructive receipt rules. The short story on constructive receipt is from the IRS's, from the Internal Revenue's perspective, is that if you have access to determine how you're going, when you can receive payment in money, it's yours and we're going to tax you on it. So we clarified those rules to comply with the IRS so we don't get our staff in trouble from a tax perspective. We clarified the process and basically established the process for when Eric's officers need to go to court to testify in a case. Did things like that. We updated the language on sick leave, meaning who's considered a related party for sick leave. One thing that's not on here is bereavement leave, who's considered eligible for bereavement leave. In some of these, rather than trying to identify each specific situation, we referred to the state statute covering that matter. So as the statute changed, so does our policy. There aren't that many changes in it, but there are minor changes for clarification purposes. We didn't want to change the contract every time the state changed the rules. We wanted to say that we're going to comply with them as part of the contract. That makes sense. We clarified the language on retiree insurance, how those premiums are paid and how that whole process works, to be more consistent with what we're doing for other staff. And then one of the things we wanted to do was we wanted to make sure we were recognizing those individuals that work nights. Pretty much in the industry, those folks that work the night shift get paid a little more, and we were really on the low end of that scale, so we moved it up to 75 cents an hour as opposed to 50 cents an hour. Those are some of the things that had significance in the contract. So Gary and Dave, did I capture anything, or was there something
Yes.
you wanted to add? Either one of you wanted to add to that? Okay, so we had a discussion on that at the Personnel Committee meeting, and the purpose of that was not to have the Personnel Committee make that recommendation, because they already have identified a team that's responsible for doing that. And so with that, the recommendation of the negotiating team is to recommend the approval of the Teamsters General Local 346 contract renewal for the period January 1st, 2019 through December 31st, 2021. And that's what they're asking a motion for.
I'll make it.
I can second it.
Right.
First by Schrupp, second by Hecox. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay.
Okay, thank you. So then what we'll do is, we'll have that sign that, and we'll send that back to the union. They've actually already signed it. So the second item on there, if you want to flip the page on that, Brad, is now that we have both union contracts settled, one of the strategies when you're negotiating a contract is, you know, don't show your cards for what you're doing with the rest of your staff or the discussions you're having. So you generally hold those discussions off with staff, other staff requests. So we talked about those at length this morning at the Personnel Committee, and we came up with the unanimous recommendation to adjust the annual fire chief salary from $6,000 to $14,400, retroactive to the first of the year. And in doing that, we're recognizing the efforts that Chip does, and we'd really like to get his hourly effort from about $8 an hour up to at least what we're getting for the paid on-call staff.
McDonald's?
Yeah, that would do it. He obviously spends a lot more time doing that. I mean, he's somewhere around 800 hours a year, I would imagine, at least, to do that. So the committee's recommendation is to adjust his compensation to that level.
I would so move.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. The second Personnel Committee recommendation is a market value adjustment for our police sergeant. And when I say market value adjustment, what we do is every year we look at how we compensate people, whether it's the park director, the police chief. He was smiling, so I had to call him out. Myself, other staff, even the folks that work in the sewer plant, drive the plow truck, drive the lawnmower. We want to know that we're compensating people within a reasonable amount for the things that we're asking them to do and be responsible for. So what I do is I look at, okay, we've got a union contract that is negotiated at market, so that's our market. And the way we agreed to those union contracts was we looked at what other communities statewide are paying for similar positions. And we were right in the ballpark of where a person with a moderate level of experience should be paid within that range. And so that's how we get a comfort level with the unions. We do the same thing for the non-union staff. We want to make sure that we're competitive in a really, what I call a really tight labor market. If you remember, you probably heard on the news how hard it is to find people, how much time and effort it takes to train people. Right now, the last numbers through December of 2018, Minnesota was about, I believe, 2.8%, 2.8 or 2.7 unemployment rate. We were ranked number 7th as the lowest unemployment rate nationwide. I think Alaska was the highest at about 6.3%. Doesn't matter, but the point is we need to be respectful of that. And so we looked at the police sergeant's base salary, and we came up with a recommendation, the Personnel Committee, of about $32 an hour, retroactive to January 1st. And what that does is that puts our police sergeant just a little bit above the median for a police sergeant position, and that gives us the opportunity to recognize, you know, his level of service that he's been in law enforcement. So that's the recommendation of the committee. The police chief was in agreement with that. In fact, he did a little research and came up with what our neighbors are at, meaning the immediate community, and they're anywhere from about $28 to about $35 or $36. So we felt that was a good spot.
How many years has the sergeant been on the force?
20, 19?
20 years, 21. He's been on the force, and he's been a law enforcement officer for 21 years, I believe. And a lot of that time, the more recent time, he's been the sergeant the last year or so.
So you're looking for a motion.
I so move.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. And the last one is the non-union department heads, and that would be the people we mentioned earlier, including myself, Eric, TJ, Ted, Jane, and those folks. I don't think I missed anybody. Shar. I could feel that. So what we're asking for is the committee couldn't make a recommendation because two of the staff asking for the compensation adjustment are on the committee. But the committee did agree that there wasn't any dissension among the committee that a 4% adjustment over last year would be unreasonable. So that's what my recommendation is for the non-union department head staff.
I'll make the motion.
Motion
I'll
by
second.
Hicks, second by Andrews. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. On behalf of myself and all department heads, thank you for that consideration. Unless you have any questions for me, I don't have anything further.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Public safety.
Good evening. Thank you for Sergeant Swanson's raising my own. I appreciate that. Tonight I just want to talk to you about a couple things. First thing, back in September I asked permission to purchase a Ford Explorer. Just last month I was contacted by Hibbing Ford, who I ordered it through, and even though we ordered it on time and everything, Ford has decided that they are not going to fulfill 175 of the 350 SUVs that were ordered. And the other option is to wait until April to order it, and with delivery sometime around October, and the vehicle would be $5,000 to $7,000 more a piece. So nationwide, they are not fulfilling 3,000 to 4,000 orders. I'm not sure why. It has something to do with changing over to the 2020 squad, and they started or stopped making the 2019 squad in February, and are going to start making the 2020 squad in April, whatever that might be. Bottom line is I've looked into Dodge Durango. It's about $1,000 more to purchase a vehicle. We'll still be within the same budget, and we won't go over. So just kind of information, that's what we're going to be ordering this year.
Dodge Durango being a 19, also
Yep.
a carryover?
Yep, 19, and that's going to be through Tanner Motors, so locally here. Unless you have any problems, I'm just going to go ahead and make that order. Okay,
I would
thank
say,
you.
huh? Do it.
Yep.
Secondly, we have had a golf cart ordinance in the books for as many years as I can remember. I talked to Chief Backdahl, retired Chief Backdahl, this afternoon and asked him, where did it come from? Why did it, ever appear? Well, according to him, sometime back in the 80s or something like that, somebody was on Manhattan Point Boulevard and they wanted to drive their golf cart down to Manhattan Beach Lodge, apparently where the mailboxes were, so they could get their mail. So the council at that time adopted a golf cart ordinance. As Chief Backdahl said, there was probably 3 permits that were ever issued that he can remember. No permits have been issued ever since. They weren't issued in Chief Hartman's era. Nothing's come to me for anything. And it's my feeling not to give out any permits. It's just a safety issue. I have a real tough time with it, and to avoid any I want to get rid of it.
Clean the
in
books up
essence.
and get rid of it. What's the policy if you catch somebody driving on the road in a golf cart? Turn the other cheek?
We'll send them home.
How about Crosswoods Golf Course going across 3?
That's allowed use. I mean,
Oh, it
that
is,
you
okay.
can, by state law, cross.
It's a county road too.
The
I
county
think,
road,
so it's
right.
not a city
And see,
road.
that's the other issue, is if we do a golf cart ordinance in town, that only covers city streets. And so you're not getting to Crosswoods without going on a county road. We don't control that. So there's really no purpose for it. We do have ATVs. ATVs, side-by-side, Class 1 and Class 2 are allowed on city streets and the county roads in Cross Lake. So that's fine, but they also have to follow the ordinances and the statutes as far as, juveniles wearing helmets. They have to be a licensed operator. It's got to be insured, lights, that whole thing, and obviously registered with the state.
So currently, right now, you don't have any out?
We don't,
It's just
no,
dead?
there's no permit costs, I don't think, right now. There isn't
But there's
fine
nobody holding a
cost.
permit right now?
Nobody, no.
No.
Well, I make a motion to remove it. That's what you're looking for, right?
Yeah,
I'll second that.
okay, and then they have to, that's not here, Shar.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, okay, it is. Yeah, so then it'd have to be published, and.
But you're looking
Do we
for a
need
motion
for
tonight?
both? Yes.
Okay.
Gary
Motion,
made-
second by Gary.
Gary made one, I second it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good move.
Do we need a motion to publish it now too, or?
But it's all
What do you
on
need,
there.
Shar?
It's written on there.
It's all in here.
Okay,
It's the last line.
that's it, thank you.
Eric, I got a question for
Yeah.
you. It seemed like a year or so ago, we talked about flashing stoplights at 103, and I know 103 is a county road. Weren't you going to look into putting those in some key spots?
We were looking at that, I talked to Tim Bray, and they put in bigger stoplights down at 103 and 3, or stop signs, sorry, 103 and 3, and they wanted to see how that worked. They didn't want to start with a blinking light down there.
So what's your opinion of that? It's not working great, huh?
The accident that we had down there as recently, I think, was not so much a,
Distracted driver instead of...
yeah, there was more to it than not seeing the stop sign.
It's just that corner gets a lot of activity down there, so
It does.
I just wanted to ask, and it seems like,
The county wanted to keep an eye on it and see how it went. We haven't had, well, I don't want to get into that, but I don't want to jinx myself. It seems to be working for now.
but a few
It
weeks
would,
ago...
to me, it would be better to have a flashing light there, but I don't control that. I talked to the county about it and asked for it, but.
Just, can you call them again and tell them
Sure,
that we
I can
just
talk
had another
to Tim
incident
or
or
Rob and
something?
see what they have to say.
Just
Sure.
seems like, of all the intersection, that's kind of a hot spot.
Mm-hmm. We can certainly have that conversation again. But would the city be willing to participate? Because that's something that they might come back with, and
Well, let's jump over that thing when we come to it, huh?
all right,
I think it's important, though. I mean, with the amount of activity down there.
sure, I get it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
John, planning and zoning?
Good evening. We do have one item on the agenda, but I need to pull that because the property owner, Mr. Johnson, is out of state. He wasn't able to get in and pay the park fee. It is the city's policy that the park fee be paid before it get approved, so we'll bring this back to you on the 11th of March.
Okay,
That's all I have. Thank you.
thanks.
You.
Public Works? Oh, the snow plowing policy. This is-
Mr. Mayor, maybe when Tim comes to talk to us about
3 and 66, we can ask them about 103 at the same time.
Yeah.
The first item you have there is a change to our snow plowing policy. If you look on item 6, it's going to state, the city will only replace mailboxes and posts that are in compliance with the U.S. postal regulations on a swing-away post. Damage to any other type of post is not the responsibility of the city and will not be replaced. So that would be the wording changes to the policy.
I got a little story to tell about that one. Obviously, the snow is bad this year. So the residents are complaining about they can't get out of their driveways, so these guys go out to plow the roads. Nobody maintains their mailbox, nobody shovels them out, push the snow back and knocks them over. There was a guy on Dagapine Road that came in cussing at Char, cussing at Ted, demanding, so I went out there and I looked at the mailbox. And it was an old wooden post mailbox with 2x4 screwed to the side of it, holding together that you could take it apart with your hand. A rotten old 30-year-old mailbox. And this guy's demanding everybody goes down there and replaces mailbox in the winter. So I just think we should have a policy that if it's not an approved, maintained mailbox, they're on their own. Or we're going to be replacing every other mailbox in the city.
I agree with you.
I just think people have to take some accountability and, you know, we can't be, there'll be bird baths and bird feeders next, you know? So that's the reason.
Ted, do we have swing-aways? Did you buy some?
We bought some and we have them.
So they are available?
We have them available either through us or through the county.
And do you just give them to the
They're
resident?
for
or
sale
do-
for the cost, our cost, they're available for.
So they're
And they have to
$75 or
install them?
something?
They install?
What's that?
They install?
That's what I prefer, but we have installed, but we've,
But really, I mean, do we want to go replace everybody's mailbox?
Oh,
Is
no,
that
no,
up to
no,
us
I'm
to do
just,
that?
no, I'm just giving,
Yeah.
this came up before at Public Works a while back, so.
I think people have to,
Sure,
you
yeah.
know, maintain and take care of their stuff. We can't be doing that.
Yep.
So,
I'll make a motion, we approve the change.
I second.
motion by Schrupp, second by Andrews. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
thank you. Just a policy, in our policy. The next one is, we've been working on the assessments. And one of the things we've came across is, how do we come up with a assessment that is fair to everybody? And after doing some conversations with Dave, there's kind of a different way of looking at it right now, and what it is an opinion of an appraiser on what the benefit to that property was. So it gives us something to justify the assessment that we're going to be giving out. So we kind of asked Dave if there's anybody that's doing this right now, and he got from this Nagel Appraisal and Consulting, the cost to do Big Pine Trail, East Shore Drive and Park Drive, County 66 to Moonlight Bay and Moonlight Square. So CASA 66 to Moonlight Square. And the reason I picked them is they're, part of them are sewer, part of them are sewer and street, and part of it's just street. So I was trying to get an opinion so we could come up with so we get some kind of comfort in what we were going to be coming forward with the assessment policy. Anything else you want to add, Dave?
Just that, so there was, we did ask them to also look at street and sanitary sewer should East Shore Road project go forward. And so there was an add-on to that proposal of $300 to look at
the value of extending sanitary sewer in that area. So they look at the type of property that's along the project corridor, the type of improvements that are being proposed, commercial, residential, what the values of the property are in general, and then give an opinion of what the improvement benefit is for that project area. So it should be helpful to the city to
Did you pick
develop
Big
this
Pine
policy.
because of the Rock Dam project coming up?
Yes.
And why East Shore? Do you feel like that might be one of the next ones?
It's a good example where we have a road project that could happen, or we could have a road project and a sewer project.
So Big Pine isn't going to be sewer, that's just road.
That's just road, but it gives us some examples, something to work from. Is why we picked those.
So at a total cost of $4,000 or something, is that what it is? 3,600?
It would be $1,200 to look at Big Pine Trail. It would be $1,500 to look at East Shore Road and Park Drive. And that's street and sewer.
Yep.
Sewer on just East Shore Road is what we're looking at. And then $1,200 to look at benefit of extending sanitary sewer up to Moonlight Square.
So that's $3,900 or something. And I think that's what the group asked you to do, right?
Like I said, it gives us, so we have more confidence in what we're actually going to be bringing forward as the assessment policy.
I think that, came in equal or less than what we kind of anticipated it being.
Mhm.
Is that true?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. Well, the assessments is a big part of moving forward with any of that.
Got to get it
So
done.
we got to get that done.
I'll make a motion, we approve it.
I'll second it.
Motion by Schrupp, second by Hecox. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The last thing I have here, item C, is I've been working as part of the group with the facilities needs. And I asked WSN here, or I asked permission of the group, and then I asked WSN to come in and came and give us a rough look-see. It didn't really cost us anything to first draft of the buildings and what their opinions of the buildings and what we could do. And we've kind of come to the point where we need to spend some money to come up with a more detailed design. So we asked WSN to give us a proposal to do that, what do you call it? Schematic, there you go, of the site and of of potential new fire hall and some cost estimating. So we have a better idea where we actually are with some of these numbers. With a lump sum for that project would be $4,500. I need council action on that, please.
Okay, what limits did we put on that study? During our last meeting, we had different discussions, dollar amounts, where are you at with the limits of it? Mike, do you want to talk to that? I'm kind of trying to get a feel in what direction, so we don't just go off in another direction. We've spent a lot of money on stuff.
You bet. Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor and council, for allowing me the time to speak. My name is Mike Anglin. I'm an architect at WSN out of our Brainerd office. My proposal came at the direction of the building committee as a next step. And I've identified the deliverables within this proposal and then within that time frame. Basically, over the course of since 2009 and even with 2019, you've had two different facility assessments. And we were asked, WSN was asked, just to take a look at those two and take a look at basically what the recommendations were. And so, as was stated in the proposal, On February 1st, I met with the building committee, and we walked through the facilities here, walked through the property to the south. And the takeaway then was I was just going to take a look at these two studies, look at the existing facilities, and then come back to the building committee and offer my recommendation. And in my opinion, you have a lot of great information that I would say is big picture, or maybe a broad stroke in terms of what you could be considering or what could be the next steps. And so included with my proposal, I felt it was important to include the agenda, the meeting agenda that I had provided the building committee. And the reason I did that was because it was essentially everything that I try to take into consideration when I'm giving anybody my recommendation as a design professional. And also what I included within my proposal was the schematic drawings or the conceptual plans about what I thought you should do as a next step. And as you may have reviewed within my proposal, there are certain scopes of work I think can be done on site with your existing asset. And I think that there are some items that you can't do on this site, and that relates to the fire department and their specific needs and the specific space needs that they have. So in my opinion, the next step that should be taken is a schematic design, and by that I mean it's a more detailed design that would look at this building. It would address, from an administration and police department standpoint, spatially what could be done to provide a secured entrance to allow for the proper processing with the police department, with administration, and basically address the fire department needs off-site. And that would require taking a look at a different site, taking a look at site access, sight lines, and access directly out onto 66. And so what I'm proposing to do is more detailed drawings. And again, I think that's where the building committee is that they need more specific information so that they can consider that more carefully as it relates to the scope of the project, what's the right investment. And as you can see by my agenda, the first thing I asked was, what's your budget? And so I think for the first time, this process will allow us to look at a more detailed design and actually work against a budget that they feel is more appropriate. Even since that meeting, something I haven't had the opportunity to share with the building committee is, do we take a look at this thing more from a master plan standpoint? Because maybe you can construct a new fire hall off-site for a certain dollar amount, make the right investments into this building that could serve those two departments for a certain amount of time, and then maybe there's additional new construction that occurs down the road on the adjacent property or on this different site where the fire hall is constructed. So I have specific ideas, and basically what I'm proposing to do over the course of the next couple of weeks prior to your March 11th City Council meeting is to provide that schematic design, review some cost estimates that would be associated with that work, present the building committee with a plan, specific plan that they can clearly communicate not only with you, but then with the citizens of Cross Lake, and be ready to discuss what the next steps are at that point.
So I was part of and at the last building committee meeting. So is it fair for me to ask what dollar amount you're kind of budgeting for the project? Or is that an unfair question?
I don't think it's an unfair question, and it's one, again, the first question I asked the committee, so I
I'm a
did
little
it.
unclear on how we left it at the end of that last meeting.
So what we had identified was a range of between 4 million and about 7 million. And again, I came in with a specific idea in my head, but it wasn't based on what the building committee felt that the actual budget would be. And so as part of this process moving forward, it's identifying what can be done with that 4 million. And then again, something I haven't had a chance to follow back with the building committee on, maybe this is a long-term investment that occurs not only this year, but maybe there's future investments that can be made to help spread the cost of this ultimate design
To help pay for it over several years.
Exactly.
Right, yeah.
And so it's, again, within the agenda, it's communicating, is it a compelling need? What is the need to do this project? What are the needs of these facilities? How are you funding this project? what mechanism are you using to do that? And so the reason why I put this agenda together was to, again, allow you guys to see how I approach this type of a project. It's also based on recent experience with counties, with municipalities, or a school district. It's all about communicating what the compelling need is, how you're going to fund that, what's your long-term vision, what's for the right thing to do. And that includes, and with my recent experience now, there's a project where a county decided to invest in an existing asset because that was the right investment now, but then they have a long-term vision down the road for additional projects. And so, again, this agenda and what I had presented to the building committee, I didn't know what the budget was at the time, but I did know the process, and this is the right process to move forward with.
My concern is in '09, we did this at a cost of $17,000 or something, or in that range. Last summer, we did it at a cost of $23,000. Now we're doing it at a cost of $4,500. And I'm not sure that we're in a good direction, if we know where we're going, You're saying 4 to 7. I would probably say you're going to end up at 7.
Yeah, and I would say the difference between '09 and what you just received in 2019 was you were never working against the budget or even having that as part of your conversation, at least as far as I know. And the
If
benefit
we're going to
of
go off-site with the new fire and do this, I got to believe it's going to be approaching the higher than the lower, but
Yeah, and
that's what we're doing.
But I think what he presented before was his best guesstimate, in a quick fashion. Now he's going to get some time to sharpen the pencil a little more.
You're going to actually spend time with staff and do a footprint kind of layout of what it's going to be.
The costs will have more credibility.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I think the fact you have two, the way I read and participated in the meeting, that if we buy into the fire hall concept at a different location, that's something we could do first, independent of the other, and then move the fire department into that deal. And if we saw our way to do more remodeling the following year, whatever it is, then we could say, okay, then we're going to do the police department and pay for the police department, so this doesn't put us in the poorhouse. You can do this over time. Mike and Shar would be last.
I
right?
just,
So
I got to be
that's,
honest, in my vision, if we take fire out of this building and move it off-site, this building is way too big for what the rest of it needs, I think. So then, down the road, however long it might be, it's probably eliminating this whole building and doing another building is what the short-term future holds, in my eyes, where we're going.
Yeah, and again, based on my recent experience currently working with a municipality where there's a fire hall that the bays are sized too small, and so we've identified minimal investment into that building because the long-term solution is not modifying that building because it just doesn't physically work for the new equipment and
Is that
response
this building
times.
here you're talking about?
It is not. No, it's
Okay.
a different community.
And you have to remember, the committee made this recommendation. They're behind this next step. And I know $4,500 is $4,500, but it doesn't compare
I just hope we're going in the right
$4
direction,
million
is all.
bucks. You have to spend some
I
money
just hope we're going in a
to buy
direction.
their expertise, so
Can we take
that's what
some
we're
public
doing.
input into this? We got Doreen would like to say something.
Well, since I'm on the committee and we're talking.
I think you got to come up, Doreen.
Do I have to do the whole thing again? Doreen Galloway, 36080 Johnny Street. I guess the way I'm feeling about it is that when we left the last meeting and we go through in that 2 hours so much information and it goes back and forth like a volleyball tournament, is that I can look back on that meeting now and go, I'm not sure that if we're going to start paying money for a drawing we haven't decided if that's the way we're going to go. And I'm not sure if I'm comfortable with $4,500, if then we can turn around and go, well, we're not going to move fire out of this building now. I guess, and I'm asking, is that based on, where'd you go? There you go. Sorry. moving fire completely out, like where we ended the meeting and having just police and city here, right? Yeah, it's way too much space. So
Well,
I
I mean-
guess I didn't know we were there yet. I didn't know we were at that point, is
If
what
you
I
run the
would say.
5 or 10-year ball, I think this building is gone in the near future, and we redoing everything. So I don't know where it's going either.
Okay, all right.
Mike, go ahead.
I was just confused.
The one thing I would say about having police occupy or take over the existing fire department base, if you read through the 2009 information as well as the recent 2019 report, it does identify space needs that the police department has. It's 4 bays that they need. It's areas for impound that would be within a secured area. And there's also, I would just recommend, there's processes with police department. There's evidence that gets brought in, and that needs to occur in a certain way. And also from a secured storage, there's opportunities. The 2009 report by WSN proposed that you would add on a police department. And at that time, it may have made sense, but today, in my opinion, it does not, based on the fire department equipment needs. And so again, in my opinion, there's a way to, a short-term investment that could be minimal to the city, provide the space that the police department needs within fire department area now. You can create a secured entrance. I'm repeating myself now, but if you go back and look at all that information, there is some programming detail there. There was a lot of time spent with staff about what the needs are, what the space needs are. I'm just proposing why rebuild it if you have it, and maybe this is a short-term solution with minimal cost impact to the city of Cross Lake and the citizens, and your initial investment is constructing a building where you can size it appropriately.
Tom Swenson, I'm also on that committee. My recollection, and I guess it's a little different than Doreen's, when we left that meeting, we asked WSN to put a proposal together, putting a better idea of the schematics of what it would be. And I guess the other thing I would say is the reason we were going in that direction to have him put that together is we also made the recommendation that the city establish a negotiating committee to look at the 2 properties. So from that standpoint, my feeling is the committee, and maybe it's $4,000 that I think it's a good investment. If you're going to spend $4 to $7 million, $4,500 to get these schematics and review whether that's the right option to even be looking at, putting the fire hall off-site. That was my recollection of how the committee left it. They wanted to go with what Mike had proposed with the fire hall being off-site and seeing what you could do with this building. And I think that's where the recommendation to try to negotiate the
that's what I
2
remember,
properties, along with, let's get some better schematics and cost estimates for remodeling here and what could be done over there. And I believe, and I don't know what's in the proposal, but I believe we also asked for a timeline as far as how we could spread this out, because we did talk similar to what Dave was talking about, where, we do one step first, and then we try to spread it out over, it may be 3 or 4 years as far as the cost goes to spread it out, so we're not hitting the taxpayers all at once with up to $7 million or whatever it does come in at. So,
Okay, but it's $4,500 today to move this thing down the road. In all, it's $45,000 we've spent, and that's all I'm saying is I hope we're going in a direction. I look at this whole end of this thing for police, when police is now in a little corridor over there. I mean, they're gonna have lots of room to grow.
I look at it as, this is the building that we got dealt with, and it could have been the other way where it isn't quite enough for the police, but I'm glad that we have extra room.
there's a lot of
I mean,
Dave?
I can't argue with that, but I think my opinion is let the professionals give us a shot here for $4,500.
Okay.
I trust what they do. I don't know what you guys think, but this is what they do day in and day out. And it'll help us in the committee kind of move ahead, and maybe we look at the drawings and say, well, can we add that later or something to cut the costs? I don't know, but we need something to look at. What we looked at before was kind of high level, and now this will get us down into the details, so.
If we ended up with extra room, we definitely need a bigger council chamber, and I don't know if that's part of the new, but I would love to be able to hold our elections here so that we don't have to move everything down to the community center and be right here in the same building. So any bigger, larger space would be great.
It's just a once every 2-year event you're talking about specifically there. We got a heat and whatever, but that's fine.
I'm saying we could use it.
Okay.
I
Dan?
think the one information we got new from the last meeting was the concept that we really probably could not keep the fire in this building because of the spacing between the posts, et cetera. And so I think that was originally been talking about moving police off. And so I think that was where the change was. We're now talking about possibly moving fire off, just because of the space they need to work on the trucks.
Dan?
Dan Hegerston, Sandpoint Drive. I'm also on the committee. A few things. One is that, we keep talking about the past. Yeah, we have spent that money. I don't think we should be held accountable to what inactions were done 10 years ago. The 5 Bugles did not address remodeling, period. It was an all-new situation. And so I can't help but think that proposal, Mike, was pretty invasive of doing a lot of major things here. Part of your things were minor, major, medium type of remodeling. If indeed we're talking about perhaps maybe just repurposing some things, we could maybe be looking at a very minimal, investment here and going off-site and maybe even being below or $4 million. I don't know. I'm just saying it doesn't necessarily, we saw the number and it ballooned up to 7, but I think that was looking at this really gutting it to the sides
Yeah,
and
it was.
starting
It was
over.
everything, yeah.
Where we might be able to just give the police, their space, securitize it, get off-site and go from there. So I recommend, I guess I'm assuming what I just said would be encompassing in that $4,500, and perhaps we could, it'd be kicked back to the committee with a motion to approve the $4,500. We can fine-tune what exactly we want, because at the end of the day, if we don't get any scientific experiment, you don't have a baseline, we're nowhere. And we might get lucky getting it right now, but if we don't, then we got to pay $4,500 again, but we got to start somewhere. But I think we're at the position now where we are going to move forward, but I don't think 10 years ago we were.
Thanks, Dan.
With that, you were motion to approve the proposal, or?
I'll make a motion that we authorize WSN to do a study as presented.
Design.
Or do a design, I guess, yeah.
The schematic.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just one thing, I hope everybody's is patient with us. We're all frustrated with the snow, where we're gonna put it. When I'm plowing, it comes off in everybody's driveway. I've been told I'm number 1 many times. I've been accused of many things, but I'm doing the best I can with the circumstances we have. Realize some of our roads are getting pretty narrow. Please, everybody just drive safely. I just wanna.
How do you handle the phone calls?
Well, some of them Char gets, some of them I get. I just take and, if we get a phone call and they're hollering, and hopefully we come to a understanding at the end. And a few of them I had to hang up on because it's just, I can't get them to settle down. They're just mad at me, so.
I wouldn't delay too long in the hanging up portion of it if they come off that way.
Yeah, I've got pretty thick skin after 20 years of doing this, so.
Yeah. I wouldn't, it wouldn't take me long to hang up on them.
Anyway, I just want to thank the council for their actions tonight.
Thank you, Ted.
Parks and
All right, TJ, come on up.
Good evening. My first item, you'll see hours of operation. Put our current hours in there, Monday through Thursday, 5 a.m. to 9 p.m., Friday, 5 a.m. to 7 p.m., and then Saturday, Sunday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Underneath that set, you'll see my recommended hours, Monday through Thursday, 6:30 a.m., to 9 p.m., and then Friday, 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. The reasons for this, since I've started, I've taken a peek at our user totals, and Jane and I both gathered and kind of talked about how we can fix this and how we should fix this. Between the 5 and 6:30 a.m. time slot, we're averaging 1 to 2 users. I think that's pretty inefficient to open up for an hour and a half for 1 to 2 users, as well as the increasingly difficult aspect of staffing that time slot between 5 a.m. to 6:30 a.m. In the winter, it's awfully dark at 5 a.m. Some of my employees have to wake up at 3:45 to come into work. Some of the roads aren't plowed. It's pretty dangerous, and it's really early and kind of inconvenient to my eyes. So with those two aspects, I would like to switch the hours to the recommended hours shown below.
Could I ask, on Friday, do you have people that come in between 5 and 6:30?
Good question. About the same average. 2, maybe 3. Maybe sometimes we see 3 to 4. I guess we can switch that to 6:30 as well. And then the reason I switched to 7, 5 a.m. to 7, or to 5 a.m. to 5 p.m., is in the summer, Fridays, everyone's out and enjoying the good weather, nice weather. They're out in the bodies of water. They're not really inside, so that's why I switched it to the 5 p.m.
I just was asking about the Friday mornings, whether that could go to 6:30 or
Yep.
if there's a reason you need to keep it at 5.
We can go to 6:30.
Do you
Switch that.
do a seasonal change in the hours, or is it set?
I think that'd be too complicated. If we get on a solid set schedule, I think that'd be easier for users to get used to that schedule.
Does anybody want to make a motion?
Is it a motion to change it then?
I'd make a motion to take the recommended hours and go to 6:30 on Friday.
Perfect.
6:30 a.m. opening.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carries.
Item number 2 consists of library donation policy revisions, and you'll see on the back of my agenda just a few minor additions, music CDs, and then Jan kind of expanded on some of the will not accept items. We're just looking for a motion to accept the new policy revisions.
I so move.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Just last 2 notable updates. We just received our new rotation desk computers for the library. That's where the volunteers sit and check in, check out books, and do some research on the other computer. We got 2 of them. Me and Terry, a fellow volunteer, he kind of acts as the volunteer IT guy back in the library. He's going to help me put the computers back there tomorrow and get them set up and running and see what we have to do to get the software on the computers. So just a quick update there. And then I just recently developed a Facebook page for the community center. This will serve as updates when we get the trails groomed, get the sledding hill groomed, when the sheet of ice is flooded, and other services that we offer and how much they cost. So just kind of keeps the patrons and other users that use the community center in touch and aware of what we offer.
Sounds good.
That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, DJ.
TJ.
Okay, Oh, okay.
Oh, I can let them know.
Can I make a
Update?
comment
Yep.
first? I spoke as a resident, a committee member on that, and now I'm going to speak as the secretary to the PAL Foundation. The PAL Foundation, we basically have two main fundraising things other than periodic donations. One is the race we sponsor in the summertime, and the other one is our solicitation letter that goes out with a recap of what the PAL has been involved with throughout the year. This last year, and we send it out in November. Last year, we used the labels that we got from the county. We sent out, I think it was like 1,100, and the response just isn't real good, just mailing out the letter to the property owners. What the board talked about was trying to target the people that are actually using the library and the facilities in the rec center. And the way we wanted to do that was to be able to get access to have a base list of users so that we could send out the solicitation letter to the people that are actually using the facilities. And the state has requirements that, it's called a Tennyson warning, that before the governments can't give out personal information unless somebody signs this Tennyson warning saying what their name and address would be used for. Marcia Volz, who was the city administrator in Fairfax for 40 years, she put together a Tennyson warning specific to the PAL Foundation. And what we wanted to do was get the council's permission to attach that to the registration forms that are given out at the community center and library. And this would be totally volunteer. They don't have to sign it, and if they don't sign it, then we don't get their name and address. If they do sign it, then Jane and TJ would be able to give us the names and addresses so that we could include those on our solicitation fundraising letter. It went to the park board, and in all honesty, I had applied to be on the park board. I wasn't approved to get on there, and so I wasn't at the meeting. But the way it came out of the park board was they could be available on the counter if somebody wanted to sign them. They could. That isn't what the PAL board was after. We were after it being a voluntary form that they don't have to fill out if they don't want to, but it would be attached to registration forms so that we could target the people. And basically, because I was the treasurer before, the vast majority of the donations that come in are from people that we know are using the facility. So I guess
So as long as it wasn't part of the application or sign-up sheet where they felt they had to fill that out to fill the first form out.
Right.
I mean, that's the only thing I could see where there could be a little conflict.
Yeah. And I think that's where the park board was maybe coming from, but this would be totally voluntary for them to sign it. But what it does is it gives us access to the people that are
Is there a
actually.
way that you could have the people put the information on them themselves that
They
you
would
needed?
put it on.
Well, you had said before that you'd ask TJ or Jane to fill out the
No.
information.
No.
I mean,
it's
is there any
it'd be
liability there, Brad, or
It'd be
anything
a
by doing
separate
that?
form, just attached to the registration form, and we could mark.
You'd put, if you want to
Yeah,
be posted or something
voluntary,
like that,
whatever.
fill this out for.
Yep, and they don't have to sign it, but it would be filled out by the person registering. And if they don't fill it out, then we don't get it. But if they do fill it out, then TJ and Jane could provide that information to the PAL Foundation,
So
so that
instead
we
of
could get them
mailing
on
out-
our mailing list.
Instead of mailing out 1,200, you'll mail out 500.
Right, don't throw so many away.
Because most of them are going in the circular file, and, oh, here's another one asking for money, and I don't use the community center. The ones that are using the community center, and the PAL Foundation, well, I've been on there for 5.5 years, but I mean, it's been going for, I don't know, 10 or 12 years, and, they've given the city, well over $100,000 toward park things. The other thing, I guess, just because of some of the discussions held earlier, we're looking for a sales tax. We're looking for, how are we going to fund this? How, the fire hall, we're talking about, millions in sewer and road stuff. The park department, unfortunately, is always kind of the poor cousin that, gets the leftovers when Ted's kind of done with a pickup truck, then the park gets it. That's just all the way it's always been. But the PAL Foundation is the one revenue source where, we can work with the city, and the park board on their priorities. And, right now, probably our main focus is the pickleball courts, trying to raise money for those. The last few years, it was the ski trails and getting the groomer and the roller and the tracks for the ATV or UTV, whatever.
Well,
it
I don't
is.
see any issue with it.
No, I don't.
mean,
What, you
we're
need
not-
a motion out of us to add this form to the application, the voluntary completion by the,
What was discussed in the commission meeting, there was a motion made to put it in their pamphlet, in the PAL pamphlet, rather than stapling it to our registration forms. We just wanted to make a bigger separation between the city of Cross Lake and us trying to get information. On the Tennyson warning for PAL, it does have PAL on the top, has a picture of their logo, but it would still be stapled to our form, the city of Cross Lake.
So how about if you didn't staple it, but you handed them out together?
That's fine.
But we're still handing them out as a city, we're still giving them the piece of paper.
but don't you tell the people in writing or verbally, this is you don't have to fill it out, but this is
Yeah.
the PAL Foundation's purpose is to continue to enhance this place that you come to, even though they're not directly hooked to the city.
Right.
So they understand what PAL is for.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's probably a better way to go about it, instead of stapling it directly to the sign-up form, membership piece of paper, to just have a separate sheet that you can hand to them and notify that, or
Just tell them what it's
describe
for.
what PAL is about and what they fund.
Yeah.
Do the people know coming in there what PAL is, what they do?
That's part of the problem.
I think a majority do know. The permanent users who come in daily, I think they know. We can certainly hang out more signs, be more vocal about what PAL does. I think that in coordination with me and PAL, we could both probably work on something, whether it be this Tennyson warning or
Wouldn't that be
PAL
advantageous
members
to do that?
PAL members could maybe come in every other 2 months and kind of sit at a table and talk to the users that as they come in and let them know.
It's quicker than a sales tax.
Well, it seems to me that PAL is in direct support of the community center and their functions, right?
Correct.
And maybe they're not a part of the city. I mean, I don't understand it,
All the
but
money that PAL takes in, the only thing we can do with that money is give it to the city for either library or park
Or
purposes.
light up the dam.
so I don't know why it wouldn't be to the
Well, light up
benefit
the
to.
dam is a little different. Just like you guys were asked to be the fiscal agent for the Loon Center, the Light Up the Dam committee came to PAL and asked if we would be the fiscal agent and hold their money for them. And we looked at our bylaws, and because they're doing sort of community park type beautification things, we felt it was within our, but that money is kept completely, it's accounted for completely separate. Jeff Laurel is the treasurer of the Light Up the Dam, and the way that works, if there's an expense for Light Up the Dam, Jeff signs an invoice, and that's the only time a check is written out for Light Up the Dam. Jeff turns in the money, and we deposit it in the account, and then our monthly treasurer's report is sent to Jeff so that he reconciles his bank checkbook banking statement with our treasurer's report, so that.
Well, I would think you guys can figure out a way to do some kind of joint partnership and figure out how to do
It just
that.
isn't a big deal as I see it. You know, if somebody comes in and is gonna register, have them register and then just ask them, would you care to fill out this Tennyson warning? And if you do that, the PAL Foundation will keep you informed on projects they're working on.
Or just put a printout there or something, or whatever.
The problem with, you know, having it in a PAL brochure that hangs on the wall, that isn't getting to the people we're trying to get to. We're trying to get to the, you know, in a lot of it, there's people that use it regularly and they probably know about PAL, but there's a lot of seasonal people that come in, they love the facilities we have, but we don't have any way of contacting them, and those are the people we're trying to find out their address so we can at least contact them.
So who passes out who sees the people with the city forms? Is that you and?
Jane and Michelle.
So what we need to do is have Jane deal with this other form at the same time? Is that what?
Which would total, depending on who it is and what they're signing up for, possibly 3 sheets of paper that this person has to sign.
Well, those are elective ones, if they elect to do
Right.
it.
If they don't want to sign them,
they
yeah.
won't take it.
But at least,
Just,
you know.
just to give you a sense. And I don't object to it, the only thing I see is I just don't want it to mesh too close with City Cross Lake and PAL. I want there to be a clear separation between the entities and not just have stable together. That's my only.
Then we'll take away your staples. So you don't have.
Right.
I don't know, unless I'm missing something here.
I think that's fine. I think it's, because we benefit tremendously from the PAL contribution, so.
So do you need a motion for that, or you need direction, or what do you need?
I didn't think I needed a motion. It was approved by the commission.
You guys
so.
learn how to work together.
Yep. Well, I just want that clear separation, so.
Okay.
Anything else?
No, you're good,
Thank you.
DJ.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, we got another public forum. No action will be taken. Do I have to read this every time? No action will be taken on any issues raised. If appropriate, the issues will be placed on the agenda for future council meetings. Speaker must state their name and address. Each speaker is given 3 minutes time limit. Anybody want to come up? Closing public forum. We got the attorney's report.
Update on Perkins Road. First of all, that dollar figure, 47,000 number that was in the bill approval, you've already authorized that. That's just the condemnation amount we have to deposit into court to do the quick take, which is in about 3 weeks. So nothing new.
So is that part of the property, paying for the property, and then part of your fees? Is that what that is?
No fees
or-
at all to me. That's just purely the acquisition cost.
Okay, so that's going towards the property for the Perkins Road expansion into the park?
Yep.
Okay. And when are we going to get a breakdown of what the costs are on that, or are we? Or is
Well, that maybe is the rest of the update. So, you've heard most of this before, but just to kind of get it all in one meeting again and just keep you up to date. All those landowners are calling us like weekly, wanting that road to be done. They would gladly pay for a large percentage of the road. There was one landowner that would not give us an easement to build the road. That's what necessitated the condemnation. The 47 grand is the land acquisition cost, so we can now we have the land to build the road. But next step, so if we're still on board of building the road next, getting the land doesn't build the road, obviously. We had a couple-year-old report, like a one-page report, just guesstimating 400 grand for the road cost. Maybe it was 300 grand.
300, yeah.
Yeah. That was not a feasibility study. If we want to do, what I would like to do is different than the assessment policy you're talking about other projects. So this project, the landowners really want it. I would prefer we get assessment agreements from all of them, nailing them down to exactly this is the cost, plus there's some trading of land involved and so on, because we've got to shift the road. But to do that, we need an actual feasibility study, which costs some money, more money. And there's also an archaeological study that I think was a cost of about $9 grand. Has that been approved yet, or do we want to talk about that right now? Dave could talk about that more accurately than me, but that also has to get done before you can move forward in the road, right? And it looks like Ted has his hand up as well. But looking for direction, if you want to get this road built in the foreseeable future, we got to start spending some money to do the planning so we can get real numbers and real plans and specs.
What I was hoping to do is bring forward the proposal from WSN for the next council meeting, the archaeological part of it, and all of that for your consideration at the next meeting is what I was hoping to do.
Perfect.
Is
Which
there
is
any
fine,
way
I just-
that you could bring a flyover view of the whole thing? You know, we were at 300 grand before, now we got the neighbors, that was with a $5,000 contribution or something on their part, they're willing to go more. Can we get a kind of an overview of where you think we're at now?
Well, that's what the
Or-
feasibility
or-
study will do. So the 300,000 was the cost of the whole road, not talking about cost sharing, just that's the whole cost. We hadn't talked about how to split that among us and the landowners. But that was an estimate. I think we need to get, that wasn't even based on a true alignment of road, just a possible alignment. We got to nail down the exact alignment, plans and specs, have them bid it out, not bid it out, but engineer's estimate bid it out, not get bids from contractors, so that we can say it's, a real number. And with that real number, we can then approach landowners and say, okay, I think the cost sharing should be 50%, for example, and the math is you would owe us $68,000 or whatever the number is. And they can sign that off, and now we know if 8 of the 12 people sign that, there's very little risk for the city now with, that's better than talk. That's a signed agreement. And now we can authorize the project and get going.
And they're eager and willing, and, I mean, all indications are.
Several of them will sign whatever we ask them to sign. They really want this road. But legally, I can't have them sign a blank check. We have to have a real number for them, not just, we'll pay whatever it costs. I mean, that's not enforceable. And so to get that, we need, an engineer study done, so we've got true numbers.
And that's 9,000?
No, the 9,000, he'll come back, I guess, in 2 weeks and talk about it. There's a study before that study that costs $9,000.
Indian
Maybe
mounds
Dave
or-
will have an estimate of what a feasibility study would cost as well.
Let me, Dave, just give you kind of a,
All right.
So we looked at the potential for archaeological sites out there. We know there are some along 103 that the county encountered, and we got a proposal for a Phase 1 archaeological study, and that's about $6,700. So that would be something that the Public Works Commission would be looking at, making a recommendation to the council next time around. Also, we can put together a proposal for the feasibility
I
study.
think we should have that too, if you can get that going.
Yep.
Yeah, yes.
Oh, that's true. Ted's brought it to my attention that there's the issue about the tree removal and
And the brown-eared bats.
meeting the concern about the bats that may be roosting in there after a certain period of time in the spring. So we'll look into that issue too.
So that's a timing issue.
That's a timing issue.
Yeah.
Everybody deals with that.
So when's your court date now?
Yeah, back to that $47,000 number on the court date. The court date's in about 3 weeks, mid-March. And if we have that money deposited on the day of that court hearing, we will have title, which means we could actually start construction the very next day. Of course, we don't have the feasibility, the other steps need to happen, but we need title before we can build something. But that's just our proposal, what the road's going to cost. The landowner has the right to challenge that number. That could take a year or 2 or 3. literally. But that wouldn't slow down the project or the title. Now we're just arguing about the money. Now, they might just accept that number. We don't know until we get to the hearing date. At least that, by depositing that amount into the court system, we can take title and keep moving and not wait for how
But we
long it
can't
takes.
really move if we don't have that final number to split up
No.
with the property owner.
No, but at least the title part is now solved, and now it's bats and burial grounds and the rest.
No, gotta get rid of the snow first.
Well, snow, yeah.
All right.
Okay, so is that a motion?
No, that wasn't, that was just an update.
We do need a motion to, it was in the consent packet, but you pulled it, so I need a motion so that Mike has authority to get me a check in my trust account so I can pay the court
I'll
system
make
when the
that
time comes.
motion.
I second.
Schrupp made the motion, Andrews second, all in favor? Aye.
That's all I have.
All righty. Any old business? Any new business?
I think you need to take the new business off for a while. We don't need any more new business.
With me with the microphone in hand, huh?
Yeah, no new business.
All right, I make a motion, we adjourn.